The Church of the Holy Sepulcher is an authentic site that roots the Christian faith in space and time. The climactic events of Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and resurrection all happened right here. The early history of how this church came to be gives us confidence that it enshrines the hill of Golgotha where Jesus was crucified, and the tomb where he was buried, and from which he arose. This video includes a lecture by Dr. Ber Schilling, our guide for our 2019 trip to Israel, and various scenes and sounds from our visit to one of the holiest places in Christendom. Let's take a moment to get oriented to what we will see inside the church. Just to the right of the entrance is a staircase leading up to an altar over the stone of Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified. Directly across from the entrance is a marble slab representing the stone of unction, where Jesus' body was prepared for burial. Farther to the left of the stone of unction is the edicule, which enshrines the remains of the tomb that is believed to be the one where Jesus was buried and from which he arose. These three events are represented in the mosaic tableau above the stone of unction. We know that Golgotha was in this place, and that nearby was a series of tombs, just as the Gospel of John describes. Many of these tombs are near the edicule, and within the complex of the church. In the early 2nd century, around 130 AD, the Romans sought to eradicate Christianity by destroying the tomb recognized by the earliest Christian traditions as the tomb of Jesus. Queen Helena, the mother of the Roman Emperor Constantine, rediscovered and restored these holy sites in the early 4th century. The church has been destroyed by fire, conquest, and earthquake many times. Dr. Schilling tells us more about these developments and the history of the Church of the Holy Sepulcher.
To commemorate what happened here. After the Second Jewish Revolt in 132, it started in 132, it ended in 135. The Bar Kokhba revolt. Remember I said there were two revolts, Jewish revolts? The Romans came in, completely eradicated the area, and built a temple to Zeus here, thinking that would completely destroy all Christian sentiment. Christianity would go away. There'd be a temple here to Zeus. All he achieved was to actually save the spot where everybody knew Jesus had been crucified and rose from the dead. In 330 AD, Constantine, early in 30 something, 317 maybe it is, Constantine has a conversion. Now some scholars question whether it was really a conversion or not, but he was going to battle and he saw a Christian sign and he saw a vision that says, in this sign you'll conquer. And he won the battle, so he converted to Christianity, and now he declares that Christianity is on the same par with every other religion in the empire. Before, they're feeding Christians to the lions. Now it's on par with everything else. It doesn't take too many years until Christianity is actually elevated through the emperor and the pope to have the position, the highest position of religion in the Roman Empire. So that begins what's called Christendom, the kingdom of Christ, the kingdom of Christianity. The problem is, prior to that, you had to make a commitment to Christ. You were persecuted. There was something to stand upon. If you were going to make a commitment to Christ, you knew you were in for trouble. People were going to make fun of you. They were going to maybe even lose your head. Read some of the martyrs of the first 400 years of Christianity. Now, everybody's a Christian. And when everybody's a Christian, nobody's a Christian. Because we all start blending in and looking alike. That's the danger of hiding within our church congregations. We all learn how to talk. We all learn how to act. We all learn the right things to say. We all learn what it means to be churchy. It's only when we're out in the world confronting the unbeliever that we really start to understand what being a believer is all about. Now, many of you don't have that problem. You've worked among secular people your whole life, and you understand that. What I'm saying is sometimes it's easy to hide our Christianity. Instead of living it with the secular people we work with, we hold on to it until Sunday. Whew, now I can be with my Sunday school class. Now I can be with my small group. And actually, we need to be out sharing. The first 330 years, if you claim to be a Christian, you put your life on the line. Only people who knew Jesus put their life on the line. After 330, now, it doesn't matter if people know I'm a Christian or not. So we have to be careful. During the Byzantine period, well, I started to talk about Constantine. In 330, he sends his mother here, Helena. She comes from Rome. She comes to the Holy Land, and she wants to commemorate these different locations of Jesus. So she identifies some of these spots. Now, some have criticized that. If you're a local and the emperor's mother shows up and asks you, where's the tomb of Jesus? What are you going to say? I have no idea. Who's Jesus? You say, over there. And so some of the sites have been questioned as to whether to their legitimacy, because nobody wanted to tell the king's mother that they didn't know. There's enough evidence here, and we're going to see the evidence before we leave, to say this is 99.99999% chance the place where Jesus died for your sins and rose again for your salvation. Okay? There is a garden tomb. It's a beautiful garden. Has a tomb, not first century. Doesn't have a rolling stone, but they brought one in so you can see what one looks like. They have a nice tour. They're very careful to say this may be the spot, but they don't say it is. It's much more like you want it to look. It's beautiful flowers growing. It's a garden. It's still in the middle of the city, but it doesn't look like this. So the Persians come in 614. They destroy all of the Christian churches in the country except one. Do you know which one? The Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. Why? Because there was a mosaic on the floor of the Magi, and they all looked like them. And they said, oh, our ancestors must have been here, and they didn't destroy the church. The only church they didn't destroy. Today, the church has 6 denominations in this one building. You have Roman Catholic, Greek Orthodox, Armenian, Syrian, Coptic, and Ethiopian. None of them get along. They, in 1926, there was an earthquake. It destroyed the roof. The roof leaked. The roof leaked for 50 years. Well, actually, it leaked longer than that. Till 1959, when finally the government says, okay, we'll fix the roof, nobody will get wet. They all argued over who had the privilege of fixing the roof, and nobody fixed the roof. This comes from U.S. News and World Report, November 26th, 2007. So it's a little old, but I pulled it out of the USA Today and put it here. The last fight recorded at the church was in 2004 when the Franciscans reportedly left their chapel door open during a Greek Orthodox ceremony. That was considered an insult. That was considered an insult by the Orthodox monks, and it resulted in bloody noses. 2 years earlier, Ethiopian monks took umbrage at a Coptic monk sitting on their roof, and scores of police were required to break up the resulting fight. And we wonder why people don't want to come to church. I used to, when I did a lot of youth ministry, I talked to Christian kids, and I'd say, maybe the reason people don't want to date you, don't want to become a Christian, is because they've already dated you. Maybe the reason your neighbors don't want to become Christians is because they live beside you. Maybe the reason the people who you work with don't want to become Christians is because they see you at work. We have a testimony to keep up. In fact, the only thing you have is your testimony. People don't care what you know. They don't care what you can argue. You never argue anybody into the kingdom. I mean, I'm pretty good at arguing. You don't argue anybody into believing what you believe. The only thing that gets them in is love, is expressing. And when they don't see Christ in you, they're not attracted to Christ. That's all free. None of it was in here, okay? Now I want you to look up at the windows above the door. See the two windows? You have a ladder above one. In the year 1757, the Ottoman Turks, who controlled this area, decreed something called status quo. Because the churches couldn't get along, because they were always arguing, the Turks decided to establish what they called status quo. As of this time, everything stays the way it is now. Nothing changes. Shortly after the status quo, someone placed a ladder. Before the status quo decree, somebody placed a ladder there. The problem is the window belongs to the Armenian church. The cornice on which the ladder rests belongs to the Greek Orthodox church. So nobody can move the ladder because it comes under status quo. Nobody uses the ladder. Nobody goes out to the ladder. It started in 1757. It was reaffirmed in 1852.
Who made the decree?
The Ottoman Turks, when they were here, because the Christian groups couldn't get along. Now, what does that tell you? The Turks are making the rules. They're in charge. Christians can't get along, so they finally say, okay, the way it is today, that's the way it's going to be. That ladder appears on every photograph of the front of this church since 1882. Then, on February the 4th, 2009, a student who was taking his guide lessons got up very early, left the school, came down here, and took a photograph of the front of the church. When he took it home and showed his instructor, the ladder was against the other window. So he and his instructor immediately came back down, came here, and the ladder was back against the other window. I put this in your field guide. They say, well, it must have been photoshopped. Here's a photo of the ladder the way it's supposed to be and the way the student took a picture of it. And I think this is in your field guide. If you look at it very closely, it's really hard because they're not taking it from the same angle to say that, well, if you notice, it's not reversed. So the mystery remains. Who moved the ladder?
What year was that?
That was 2009. So the question is, Is this the place that Jesus died? Probably. Probably. There's lots of evidence. When we get in, this is not going to look like anything you want it to look like. When we go through the door, there, right in front of the door, is a huge slab. It dates to the Crusaders, 12th century. People come in, they kneel down, they kiss it. They believe it's the stone upon which Jesus' body was prepared for the tomb. It's 12th century. When you, Kathy went to see what the line was like, but when you go see the people going in the door and turning immediately to the right, there's a staircase that goes up into a chapel right above this second archway. And you wait in line to go up. It goes back and forth. It's very crowded. And a lot of ritual, a lot of incense hanging, a lot of material things, drapes and things. And then you get up to the altar and you can get down on your hands and knees, crawl under the altar. There's a plexiglass about 5 inches round. You can put your hand in the plexiglass and reach down and touch the stone of Golgotha. That's what they're standing in line to do. Okay? So we have to make a decision whether it's worth to stand in line to do that. Or I can take you under that chapel, and through a plexiglass window you can see the base of Golgotha, but you can't touch it. You can only touch it up there. Then the next place I want to take you then is past the edicule. The edicule is this huge crusader thing that represents the tomb of Jesus. The edicule is not the tomb. It's merely like a stone monument over top of a tomb.
The Church of the Holy Sepulcher is built over Golgotha and a system of tombs carved out of rock. Many chapels have been designated within the structure related to various aspects of Jesus' death and resurrection. From the entrance to the church, a passageway leads down a long flight of stairs to a series of these chapels. Among them is the Chapel of St. Helena, the Chapel of St. Barton, and the Chapel of the Invention of the Cross. The Chapel of St. Barton is open by request only, and our group was able to gain access to it. Within this chapel, the original quarry that created Golgotha can be seen, along with some archaeological remains of Hadrian's temple and Constantine's basilica. This area also contains an intriguing etching of a ship, in the rock face of one wall. Its origin is unknown, but it may be the earliest artifact left by early Christian pilgrims who came to venerate the site of Jesus' crucifixion. A ship is often used as a symbol of the Christian Church, which is what makes this etching historically significant. This area was excavated in the 1970s, and the etching was dated back to the 2nd century. The ship appears to be a Roman pilgrim ship. An inscription near the ship says, "Lord, we come." Hadrian built his temple to Zeus around 130 AD. It may be that this etching was made before that date, indicating that well within 100 years of Jesus' crucifixion, Christians were drawn to this site as the location of his death. Another flight of stairs leads from the Chapel of St. Helena, down to the Chapel of the Finding of the Cross. This area was once a cistern created in the ancient quarry. It had been filled in by Hadrian to form part of the foundation for his temple to Zeus. When it was excavated for Constantine's basilica, tradition says that Helena discovered the one true cross in the rubble. When Emperor Hadrian attempted to eradicate Christianity, by destroying the Hill of Calvary, and the tomb of Jesus, he demolished much of the stone in which Jesus' tomb had been carved. In 2017, a major restoration of the edicule was undertaken, which revealed two important discoveries. It was long known that the edicule had been built to protect what remained of a tomb associated with Jesus' resurrection, but no one living today had ever seen what was within its walls. The restoration team confirmed that within the walls of the edicule were what was left of the walls of the original tomb. And when they removed the marble slab, venerated as the place Jesus' body had lain, they discovered the original stone slab, or bed, of the tomb. But what did the original tomb look like? There is a series of carved tombs in the rock behind the edicule. One such tomb has become home for a Coptic chapel. Others are as they have been for 2,000 years, and can be entered into. The interior of these tombs conforms to descriptions of Jesus' tomb and others like it from that time. While it cannot be said with absolute certainty that the tomb enshrined by the edicule is the actual tomb of Jesus, it can be said that Jesus' burial and resurrection occurred in this immediate area. We are standing on holy ground.